The Minnesota Wild have made multiple moves as they have returned to practice while they await the end of the Four Nations Faceoff. We're going to be talking about what those moves mean for this team and what moves will have to be made extra to be able to make this work, as well as breaking down the Four Nations Faceoff finale, which features two of the top Minnesota Wild players in Team USA. We're going to be talking about all of that here in this video. Before we get into it, though, be sure to hit the sub button if you're looking for a spot for all of your Minnesota Wild news. We're going to have it right here on this channel, as well as when the Four Nations Faceoff finishes, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about until the trade deadline. If you don't want to miss any of that, be sure to hit that sub button. But with any further ado, let's get into these moves that the Minnesota Wild have made here today as they await the finale of the Four Nations Faceoff. Getting a few people called up with a special rule the NHL implemented this year to be able to make sure that teams are going to be able to get back to practice well before, the Four Nations Faceoff ends and you just get straight back into games. And the call-ups include Liam Ohgren, Devon Shore, and goaltender Dylan Ferguson, the latter of which was recalled as a practice player only under special rule this season created to compensate for absences of NHL players this week because of the ongoing Four Nations Faceoff. And as we know, we also had many players playing for Sweden as well who ultimately got eliminated but are making their way back to the Minnesota Wild facility and getting a nice, well-deserved break for a few days before the end of this tournament. But these are some pretty significant call-ups. Obviously, Liam Ohgren, a guy who we've seen here this year, Devon Shore, as well as goaltender Dylan Ferguson, who is here for the time being as we wait for, of course, Filip Gustavsson to get back into the rhythm of things after a little break here from his Four Nations face-off, and the illness that he was actually facing during this tournament. And, it wasn't obviously the tournament for the Swedish team, and they definitely could have played better, but ultimately it's a good thing, and as I've mentioned in previous videos, that we're seeing these players play at the top level, keep things going, and really just get back into a rhythm of play. And that's going to be a big thing as well for this Team USA team. But we do have to look at as well, Liam Ohgren is a player who's been here up in the big leagues for a little while this season, and we do expect him to stay up here at some point. Now, there's a big thing that will have to occur if they do want to make another roster move, and that is having to put someone on waivers or send someone back down to the AHL, as Michael Russo says here. The Wild have recalled, of course, Ohgren, Devon Shore, and if Jacob Lacko comes off the IR, one will either have to go back to Iowa or somebody would be put on waivers. And he says, I can't see the Wild carrying 8 defenseman Travis Dermott in brackets for too much longer, with Ryan Hartman occupying that roster spot with his 10-game suspension. So that is, of course, still being worked out and fought against just to make sure, see if that gets down, and hopefully it does. But the Wild can't make many more moves. Thankfully, we do see the extra goaltender be able to come up here with this new rule due to Filip Gustavsson being out. But Liam Ohgren is a player that we want to see more of. And I think that's no doubt. I've made a previous video about him, really talking about how he's been one player that many people are talking about. One player that really just needs that shot. He needs to be up here for some time, get used to things before being sent back up and down, and really just get into the scheme of things. But ultimately, when we're looking at these moves here, I do think that Liam Ohgren would be the one to stay up at the NHL level for a little bit longer, apart from Devon Shore. Now, Devon Shore would need to go on waivers. The 30-year-old has had that NHL experience in the past and was brought in to be a veteran leadership role that, the Wild lacked a bit in the past few years as the team certainly got younger. But, Devon Shore is someone that could be here as a little while as well, but Lacko is supposed to come off IR soon, so we'll have to see what happens there. But it's good to see this team back to practice. Hopefully, Liam Ohgren stays up for a little bit longer, and ultimately comes back into this NHL level with the Wild system and starts to play a little bit better. I don't want to say he's been playing bad, but I want to see more of Liam Ohgren because it's a matter of time until we see him really take off at the NHL level. But with some more news here coming back to practice, Bill Guerin, John Hynes, Matt Boldy, and Brock Faber, and the athletic trainers John Worley and Travis Green will meet the Wild in Detroit. And Joel Eriksson Ek, Jonas Brodin, and Filip Gustavsson are flying to Minnesota tomorrow, which actually is today, as its tweet was yesterday, but get a few days off. So we would look at the way that everything is going to be playing out here as well with the people called up and these guys coming back. The Wild are still going to be getting a few days of practice with these call-ups and hopefully kind of making some decisions before then to see how, we're seeing Liam Ohgren play and whatnot, because I do think this is going to have really big implications as we head to the later part of the season, especially with what we're looking at from Liam Ohgren and the future of this team and hopefully a big playoff push here. But it will be good to see Gustavsson, Brodin, and Eriksson Ek get a few days off before they get back. Of course, not really a break break coming off the Wild's end of the season, or end of the first half of the regular season into the Four Nations Faceoff. But we still do have a few people here, as you see, of course, Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, and of course, John Hynes and Bill Guerin being missing from this as they are in the finals of the Four Nations Faceoff. And it has been no surprise to anybody that these two players in Bill Guerin, not anymore, in Matt Boldy and Brock Faber, have really made a serious impact for this USA team and ultimately going to have a big game against Canada in the finals. And when we look at the stats from these guys, as I mentioned, it's really no surprise that we're seeing these two have such a major impact on the Team USA here in this tournament. 56 games from Matt Boldy this season of 48 points. He's been on a very, very hot streak this year, going on 24 as well. One of the youngest players on this USA team and still one of the best players here, averaging 20 minutes on ice with Minnesota, but on the U.S. team, I believe he's averaging, just over 14 or around 14. I do have it right here. When we're looking here, he was averaging about 14 and has been one of the best players on this USA roster. So it really goes to show how important they are to not just the Minnesota Wild, but the U.S. team also sees how important they are. But one thing I've also liked to think about as well is when we're looking at these players in this tournament, looking at how they're going to have an impact on the Wild for the rest of the season, they are learning and playing with some of the best players in the world. Not even some, all of the best players in the world, especially Canada and U.S. right now. They're playing these two incredible teams and learning from this, being able to take away and, studying and learning from these new players that you're probably playing with for the first time here. And for the most part, and especially Matt Boldy and Brock Faber, they are playing for the most part with all of these guys for the first time. They're going to be able to learn a lot, take this back to this Minnesota Wild team, and go from there with that to teach these other guys on the team. Same with Bill Guerin, same with John Hynes. They're there firsthand to be able to experience this and really just show that this Minnesota Wild team is here for a fight in the second half of this season. But we cannot exclude Brock Faber here from this as well. 22. I feel like I don't need to say his age as many times as people are, but he has had such a major impact on this team and is averaging some of the most insane time on ice for this age player I've ever seen. 25 with the Minnesota Wild, 22 points in 52 games. But when we look at him with, of course, the USA team, he's averaging 21 minutes and 30 seconds time on ice, just 1 second less than Jacob Slavin, who has also been a very solid defenseman for US this year, as well as in the regular season. But Brock Faber as well, 2 points in 3 games, just below Zach Werenski, who has been an absolutely insane force this year in the NHL, as well as in this tournament. But putting Brock Faber in the situation, 21 minutes time on ice, against some of the best players in the world, being able to defend Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, those guys against Canada for the second time in this tournament, is something that is going to be, definitely a highlight of his career, but also just learning from this and taking this back. You're not going to be going up against a Connor McDavid every day, so being able to defend against him and then being able to bring that back to the Wild roster, things are going to be looking great for this Minnesota Wild team as we do progress. But it's going to be a very good game Thursday, and as I've mentioned, I'll be keeping you guys up to date here with all this Four Nations news that we get it, but as well as, of course, mainly the Minnesota Wild news. But we are lucky enough to see some Minnesota Wild players in the Four Nations Faceoff finale here, so that's all I got. Let me know if you think, do you got any predictions for this game on Thursday? And if so, what do you think the score is going to be? As well as what do you think that the Wild players are going to have to do to be able to make this game a big dub? But like I said, that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. And if you did make it to this point in the video, you're obviously looking for your Minnesota Wild news, so make sure to hit the sub button and join me here for a little while as we cover all of this Minnesota Wild news heading towards the trade deadline. But like I said, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.